Welcome to Biz with Blad, and today I have a very special guest, what I call the perfect guest. This show, Biz with Blad, is all about the entrepreneurial journey, and no one that I know has a more compelling story than Mr. Jay Sidhu, the chairman of Customers Bancorp, and an incredible entrepreneur who is still influencing and having an impact on many lives. Welcome to the show, Jay. Thank you so much for doing this. It's definitely an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Blad. I'm privileged to be here.
And
Thank you.
before I even start grilling you with questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know it, and I've read your book already, and I've heard you speak so many times, but what was it like coming here into the United States as an immigrant with nothing but your backpack and, from what I hear, $100 to your name? What was that like? I mean, I have so many questions,
Yeah,
but let's just start with
well,
that one.
yeah. Well, thank you. I come from very humble beginnings. I was actually born in a Tonga, what they call in India. I was born in India in what they call a Tonga. Tonga is like a rickshaw with a horse. Rather than a person cycling it. And so I never made it to the hospital. So that gives you an idea for the kind of background I come from. My father was in the officer in the Indian Army, and so we come from a sort of a lower middle class type of a family, and I was really privileged in the sense where my father was a decorated officer, and he really believed in certain principles. And he always talked about those kind of principles, and that had a major impact on my life. So when I was 16, 17 years old, I set a goal to try to travel, hitchhike with strangers, hitch rides with strangers, all the way from Delhi to London and back. And when my dad asked me, "Why do you want to do this?" I said, "I believe in if you have an understanding of people, you will end up having more peace." So it became the motto. The purpose became world peace through international understanding, which was also the Rotary Club's motto. And so I used that. I found a way to get to the Prime Minister of India's office. I found a way to raise $100 and
$100.
$100 because I was told by the British High Commission in Delhi that we are not going to give you a visa unless you at least carry $100 with you, $100 US dollars with you. And and quite frankly, my parents couldn't afford anything like that. So I had to raise it from family and whatnot. And I left with a purpose, with a mission of safely trying to get from Delhi to London and come back within 3.5 months. And since it was totally borrowed money and it would cost my family $200 worth of Indian rupees if I wasn't able to return it. So part of my mission was not just to promote my purpose, which is let the youth understand people from different cultures, and there will be better understanding, and hence there'll be better peace. So I was doing that, plus making sure that every time I spent 50 cents or a dollar, I had to make 50 cents or a dollar.
Every
And
dollar
so I had to
spent.
try to come back with. So to make a long story short, traveled through 17 countries, about 10,000 miles of hitchhiking, and came back with 106.
That worked out. The math
Yeah.
works out.
So that was when I was 16, 17 years old. And then I finished my undergraduate degree in India, and I wanted to come to America. Your question about America. And I didn't even have in dollars to pay the $20 of application fees, which was an average application fee to apply to a college. And the only way I could come was if I got a scholarship. And I wasn't a A-plus student at all. Those are the nerds are the ones who get scholarships. Like you said, I'm much more of an entrepreneur, not a nerd. I was decent in studies, but not the only thing in my life wasn't studying. It was trying to learn as much as possible while you're studying and while you're learning. So anyway, so I wrote to 40 different schools a little essay that why I can't afford to even pay your application fee, but why you should admit me. I talked about my experiences of hitchhiking, which was that I said is the best education I would have had besides my bachelor's degree in business management. And I got rejection letters from approximately 30 universities. 10 or so didn't even care to respond because it was a junk mail that they received from some kid in India. And I got two admissions. One of them with financial aid, where that's the only way I could come. And that was Wilkes University in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And today, we're privileged where that's the university where there is a Sidhu School of Business and Leadership.
Wow.
So that's how I came to America.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I've heard obviously some different versions. I've heard when you first got. I want to ask you, what was the first adversity that you encountered when you came to the United States? Because your book,
Yes.
Never Give Up, it's all about overcoming adversities.
Yeah.
What was that first adversity that you?
Well, the first adversity was it happened to be the day before Labor Day, that I landed at JFK, and I got to Wilkes-Barre in a bus through Philadelphia. And I didn't know that Labor Day everything is shut down and closed.
You didn't even know what Labor Day was.
Yeah. So I'm carrying this suitcase full of, and I asked the school to tell me what are the books, and if I could buy those books in India, which will be much cheaper, especially used ones, I don't have to spend the dollars over here to get my textbooks for the universe. So I was heavy in heavy suitcases. So I get off, I ask people where is Wilkes University, and they guide me, and I get there, and I see a padded lock at the director of admissions office and the administrative office of Wilkes University. Everything is shut down and locked up. I try to open different doors. Everything is locked. So what do I do? I'm a kid, first time ever in America. So I did walk by a YMCA, and I knew from my experiences of YMCAs do have shelters. So I spent my first 3 nights or 4 nights in a homeless shelter at the YMCA in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. You talk about, you're here with dreams, and I'm alone. I'm, 19 years old, and I was crying. I was homesick. I said, "What did I do? Where am I with these old men? Who are I didn't know what homeless really felt like, and now here I am with a bunch of old folks. I'm the only kid over here, but they were nice enough to give me a bed and let me spend the nights there till the college opened. So that was one of the first experiences in America. But I'll tell you, people are so compassionate, people are so supportive, they're so helpful. And then finally on Tuesday, when I went and introduced myself, and we got going. Now there were other challenges and excitements and interesting, but they found me a dorm room. First of all, they didn't think they had to provide me with a dorm, which was there as a
About that
part of the
before.
deal. So I was in the maintenance shed of the university with a bed where the maintenance people who are on night duty would sleep. So
I heard about that. I heard you speak about that, and obviously, when the times that I've heard you speak, it's been more of a monologue and presentation. Don't get to a lot of Q&As. The few times
yeah,
that I've been able to
yeah.
ask you, and I say how interesting it would be to ask you the questions that I wanted to ask you. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, when I heard you say that you received that scholarship, but that scholarship only covered tuition, it didn't cover
Yeah.
the room and board. And so you found that out when you got here
It
that you did
said it covered room and board, but they said it was a mistake.
after you got here already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you dealt with that because you found out that you didn't have room and board included or that they didn't want to honor it.
Well,
Eh,
no. To their benefit, they said we didn't commit to that. But when I showed them the papers, and they said, "Okay, we'll find a way to work around." And dean of students was George Ralston, and just an exceptional human being. He first told me that if nothing else works out, you come and stay at our house. That's the kind of person he was, and but fortunately, they were able to find the maintenance person didn't want to stay there, and so I occupied that, and then they found me a room, and I was one of the luckiest guys because I had an awesome roommate, Jerry Alexander, who was a wrestler at Wilkes University, who very quickly, and a real drinker, who very quickly introduced me to the college life in the 70s in America. Yeah. And so that's how I got indoctrinated with Jerry Alexander and I sharing for 2 years, in the dormitory room and learning the American way of life.
That's amazing. And Jay, I know we don't have all the time in the world, so I want to get to the best of the all the questions that I have, and I want to jump right to it. How do you end up at a bank? Because you went from, just to give a little bit of perspective, you went from an immigrant from India, from humble beginnings, to being the CEO and major shareholder and or reasonable shareholder and chairman of several banks, from the journey. How do you end up? What was your first encounter working at a bank? And I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
jumping too quickly at
No, 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 no,
capture, but
no.
I want to definitely get that in there.
No, Blad. Let me just share this with you. So, when I was on campus and finishing up my degree, so I was very fortunate to be hired right on campus by Sylvania Electronics, a company, electronics company, makes light
Live
bulbs and
bulb,
all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
And I was on top of the world because my goal at that time was to save $10,000. And that was more money than my dad could have ever imagined. And then go back and help the family and help anybody who is really looking for assistance, financial help. And so that became my goal. And and I was walking in the campus, really, on cloud nine. And when I ran into this gentleman who was the dean of our business school, which used to be called School Department of Commerce at that time, and he said, "Oh, I'm glad I ran into you because I offered you to be the management trainee candidate at a bank." I said,
you picked the position, but oh, yeah.
so I said, "Dr. Warner, I already have a job." He says, "Please, this is the chairman of our board of trustees who's a bank CEO. And he asked me on the spot, do you have a recommendation for somebody because we'd like to start a management training program and we want to get a person from Wilkes, a student from Wilkes?" And I thought of you right away. And so, to make a long story short, I ended up seeing him and I ended up seeing his associate, whose name is Dick East, when he and I have been partners and friends for the last 52, 53 years now. But I met him at that time in part of the job interview process. And he told me after the talking to each other, he said, "You're hired." So I said, "Mr. Jones, I already have a job, you know? I'm not here for a job. I mean, I'm here because Dr. Warner promised that I would show up." He said, "I'll tell you what, whatever they've offered you at Sylvania, we'll give you $500 a year more." I said, "You have a deal."
Right in it. What about?
Because I said, "I haven't even started working and I made $500 more in the first year of my life as a
I'm
work.
curious to ask what did Sylvania offer you at the time?
$8,000.
$8,000 a year was.
Yes. And so now I was at 8,500. Yeah. And my car I had purchased at that time, which was a chunky, Pontiac, cost me $250. So can you imagine what was going through my mind was, this is equivalent to buying two cars. It doesn't matter if it's two.
Cars. And I haven't even started. That's amazing. So that was your first
I got
encounter.
into banking business.
How was that job? What was that journey like? And what was your position there? And
Yeah.
how did that start?
So that was the foundation of what the question that you asked me. How did I end up having an opportunity to become a chief executive officer one day? That was a job where he asked me the same question. What do you think? We don't have a management training program. What do you think you would like to do, which will give you the learning experience and be very helpful to us? I said, no better person to learn from other than you, Mr. Jones. So if I can be of help to you, if I can be always with you and sort of be your assistant and help you with anything and any issues that you encounter. It'll be the best learning experience for me. So we became more specific rather than my sort of general statement. So he said, we have the board of directors meeting, we have senior management meetings every Tuesday morning. I have meetings with people. I meet with customers, with community people, with our own people who work over here. You sit by my side and you take notes. Everything that we've discussed, you try to identify which ones are important. Then you and I talk and let us help me follow through on those. And I said, what an opportunity. In other words, my job, which I learned, the number one reason or to succeed in a corporate world is to make your boss's job easy and way beyond what he or she may expect you to be able to do.
Wow,
All right?
yeah.
If you can just remember that's your
I'm
job.
gonna remember that.
That's your job. You will be pulled up. Right? No question. When they think about somebody who is there, because you are always thinking, how do I make my boss's job easier and make them do a much better, become much more effective. So I used to once a week sit down at the end of the week. Hey, this is what I heard. This is what it is. Would you want me to follow through on this? You want me to follow through on that? You want me to go talk to such and such a person on this one? Here it is. What do you consider to be important? What do you consider to be ignored? Like not everything. And so I became that kind of a person. And so it gave me an opportunity to really understand everything about the business of banking, everything about leadership, everything about communications, everything about corporate governance, how the board of directors work, how senior managements work, how people interact with each other, how what makes one more effective than another, because you see that. When you're sitting there and observing, see that. And as a leader, it's so important for you to be able to see that and to be able to encourage uh, folks and to be able to work as a team and to be able to identify the ones who are not carrying their weight and getting them off the bus. It's a job of a leader is also to attract, retain, develop, and those who are not carrying their weight to get him off and send him to your competitor. So that makes your job easier now. Okay, so that's what we were doing. So then Reese Jones had a heart attack when he was a young 42-year-old person. And I was only in my 20s and he died. And that was a shocker because I was working directly for him, as well as the projects that he had identified for me, like fixing the mortgage department of the company and all that stuff, which I was all short-term stints. But I would go in, spend a couple of months, fix it, hand it over to somebody else. Now I'll run it, and then I'm here to help you. That was what he suggested would be the best way for me to learn the entire banking business, and be involved and engaged. So after that, there was a new CEO, and I just sort of felt like I had a connection with Reese Jones that I'm not going to have that connection with the new people. But anyway, so I started looking around and I found another job, which was in New Jersey, and and when John Howell, who was the new CEO, found out about that, he said, "I don't want you to leave," and I said, I've already committed and my word is important. And so I got into another company, which was a good stepping stone for me. And I became the head of marketing at that company.
Head of marketing.
Marketing. Okay, at that company. And which is a pretty interesting. And we were the first ones in the country to develop a Visa. Now you see the Visa debit cards all over the place. Can you imagine that? That was developed by us, my boss,
I wonder
Bill Hudson, and myself. So,
whose marketing idea was that, dude?
yeah. Okay. So anyway, it was two of us. And we developed that and we got that marketed and we had sales campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And then Visa said, this is a good idea. Let's try to introduce it to other places. That's how it became. And ours was checking account, people just write checks. Why not make a card out of checks, and banks at that time had their own cards, but not a Visa card that will be accepted everywhere. That's how we combined the existing.
Remember those days, the debit,
Yes.
the non-Visa, non-Mastercard debit cards.
Yes, yes,
That
yes.
only
And that's such a limited, and people would go around and to merchants and say, start accepting our card, start accepting. And the merchants would have 20 logos, outside, we accept. Anyway, so we did those kind of things. And I was I was always curious in terms of learning more. So I was at Dartmouth for a program in corporate planning, and I sat at a bar, happened to be sitting next to a president of a bank, and from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, right? Or near Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I started working it. So we were connecting, with each other because from the same area. And to make a long story short, I disagreed or I argued with him, but I reconnected at an intellectual level, I'm sure. So when I got back to my office, I got a call that we have a position for a chief operating officer of the bank and we want to talk to you. And from his chief investment officer. He didn't call himself, sort of. And so he said, I'm calling for so and so. So that was a break. The reason I'm sharing this story with you is
please.
not just that one of the principles learned over there, one, uh, be a constant lifelong learner, all right? To always volunteer to learn and help others succeed beyond their imagination. If you do that for others, others will do it for you. Most people think about themselves first, others second. No, no, no. It should be the others first because then you will be considered as a top-notch candidate. Number two is as a part of that curiosity, all right? It attracts, surround yourself, try to increase opportunities to always learn and get into discussions, getting into listening mode with people who are much smarter than you. And I always considered, Paul Wiant as a very smart. I'm sitting with a bank CEO at Dartmouth, and I'm there to learn about corporate planning. My God, what good is it? And he was sitting by himself, and there, eyes shook hands and said, you must be a banker. And he was there also for the same program. And I learned a lot. And that connection opened up doors, right? Because we got into an intellectual discussion about what makes a bank hum, what are the risks involved in that. And not only did I listen from him, but he listened from me because the marketing background and Visa cards and all those kind of things were fascinating to him. That there is a lot more to it than investment portfolio management, or just making a loan to somebody. So those were those kind of principles. That's why he told me that he wanted me to be his partner, right? Which was a sort of a chief operating officer position that he created so that he says, I'll take care of the financial side of it, you take care of the operating side of it, and between the two, it'll be fun building a bank. So that was my first break that gave me that opportunity. And then he came to YMCA to be a chief executive officer of a failing bank called YMCA Federal New Home Federal Savings and Loan, which then became Penn Savings Bank, and we converted that into Sovereign Bank. That became a Fortune 500 company. But because he was recruited over here, his condition for acceptance of the job was, I got to bring my man with me. And fortunately, I was his man. Like he wanted to bring that same team over from the other company to this company. Right. And so that's how I ended up in Reading, Pennsylvania, while missing Pennsylvania. And we had a lot of fun. And this was a turnaround opportunity. So then you asked me, you became a an investor, a sort of also owner. So this bank, New Home Federal, was failing. Nobody wanted to work for them. Nobody wanted to take on the position of a chief executive officer of a failing company. Everybody wants a good company, all right? Uh-huh. So
Nobody
Paul
wants to.
and I,
Nobody wants to captain a sinking ship.
yeah. Well, I told Paul, hey, listen, if the ship is already sailing, it isn't worth that much more you just can increase its speed. But when it is sinking and you can stop that and you convert that into a beautiful sailing ship, now you created value. And I was dumb enough not to know all the problems with it, but I was smart enough in a way to say, if it's humanly possible, we'll solve it. Because that's another important role of an entrepreneur. If it's humanly possible, you should have a confidence it's going to get done by us. You don't think about all the 25 negative things. You just think about one opportunity and focus, focus, focus on that opportunity and make it possible. And recognize that if it's humanly not possible, that'll be a absolute failure. But if we can get it done, that's the winning.
Dave, when I heard you tell a version of that story about ending up at the failing bank, I really had a couple other questions, and I never thought I would get the chance to ask them to you. If you, knowing what you know today, uh, would you take that opportunity of that failing bank?
Probably not. But I would still take an opportunity of a turnaround bank, not a failing bank. There's a difference. So, but I'm still a builder, a business builder, and it is the satisfaction that you get working with a team to build something versus simply maintaining the course. Okay, it doesn't excite me to still just maintain the course. I'm just a builder. All right, it's an entrepreneurial spirit. And I never in my life have asked for a raise. I've never in my life have thought about making more money. You just kind of get it if that's what you're doing. All right, because you're creating value. People see that. And that to me was such an interesting experience. I go back to the hitchhiking that I shared with you. I had no idea about all the challenges and the problems of going through Afghanistan and getting maybe killed and going through Iran and Turkey. And what are you going to do as a 16, 17-year-old? There's no Google, there's no telephones, there's no connections. How are you going to make money? I didn't know any of that stuff. All right. All I said is, if it's humanly possible, we're going to do it. And then I didn't know that I was could end up in America, but I didn't give up. I said, if it's humanly possible, we're going to do it, and there are people who will listen. All if there are 42 of them who don't look at only grades, but they look at other things to give you a financial aid, why not write to all of them? And if you can't afford to give them $20 a piece, why not write to them and think about that? Those are the kinds of examples. There's no certainty of execution, but there is a great opportunity to get something accomplished. Same way when you said failed banks. There's no guarantee in life. For God's sake, you should be so grateful and thankful that you're living and you have an opportunity. Right? And so why not do something? Why not take that opportunity? Right? But today, when you're somewhat more successful, then you want to take opportunities which have less risk. But when you're a 20-some-year-old, right, that's the time you can take a lot of risks. And I took a risk. Probably I would have done it at that in that age. I heard your question as, will you do it today?
Knowing what you know,
Yeah.
would you
No.
would you
Yeah.
would you still take on?
See, those are the life's principles all along. It doesn't matter. All the way from dad talking about, you must have a clarity of your mission. You must be a good human being. You must always do something which is better than what anybody else expects you to do. And you must be a constant lifetime learner and give back and help others. Those principles apply to everyday life. And those are the principles which I articulate in this book, as the principle of leading a purposeful life. And in my opinion, these principles also apply to business. You must be clear about your mission, your vision. What is the purpose of the business? What problem are you solving? It's always a problem that you're solving which others see as a need for it. If you can't answer what's unique about you, you're not going to create a business that's sustainable. You might create a business that will work for a period of time, but somebody's going to come in and knock you off, especially if there is a decent margin there. But if you want a business with a sustainable margin, sustainability, you must have something unique added to it. All right? And that's the uniqueness I learned while hitchhiking. How do we make money? That is the uniqueness I learned on how to come to America and get the attention of a university, why they should give you a scholarship. That's the uniqueness I learned about how do you really identify and be a learner and try to meet as many people and learn from them, which gave me an opportunity to become a chief operating officer. And that's that same principle which gave me an opportunity to have the confidence that if it's humanly possible, we can take this New Home Federal or Penn Savings Bank and we can make something out of it.
That is incredible, and I see that theme throughout the book. That everything that you do is driven by principles, and then everything else comes around life principles, and you apply some of them in business. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Jay, how do you end up at Customers Bank? What can you walk us a little bit through that journey real quick?
Yeah.
Which is where you are right now. You're the chairman and former CEO, and
Oh,
have
still a CEO.
still the CEO of the, well, that's what the book says.
Yeah, some
Okay.
customers.
There's an incoming CEO.
Customers
There's an
Bancorp.
incoming CEO, but it's not
Still the CEO
Okay.
of Customers Bancorp. We own Customers Bank. So the Customers Bank CEO works for me.
take, take us through that. Take us through that journey. Is that correct?
Right. So um, I ended up um, having to leave Sovereign Bank because of a disagreement with a hedge fund who was able to convince the board to take a direction for the company, which was not aligned and not, I didn't believe in that direction. And unfortunately or fortunately, that turned out to be a bad direction that that guy led the company. And that's why you don't see a Sovereign Bank here today and Santander Bank here today. And those crazy people who helped achieve that decision or made that decision, stupid decision, bad decision, which is pretty obvious. I told them it's a bad decision. So it's not like they were misinformed. They chose
It's
to
not like
take.
no one saw it coming. You did know
Yeah,
them.
you saw it coming, but there are some people who just go for greed. You know, when somebody offers you some extra money or position, they forget about their principles. Their principles that we just talked about, you know? Principles are more important. Purpose and principles are a lot more important. Money happens. Money will come to those people who believe in principles and the purpose of what they're doing. So, anyway, so I decided then I wanted to be sort of a maybe an investor and then look at opportunities to invest in some businesses. And that didn't interest me at all. I'm a business builder. I'm not an investor. I'd like to get things done, not to find reasons why others are not doing a good job and all that stuff. You know, it's sort of like there's a difference. I'm just an entrepreneur who likes to do things and get things built. So we saw a little bank. We found a little bank with the help of Stevens and Lee, right here from Reading, who were the lawyers for that little bank to help them, and they were failing. And that bank's name was New Century Bank, headquartered in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. So I met with them and we did our due diligence. I met with the regulators, and the regulators said, if you invest in this bank and you become the CEO of this bank, we will leave it alone. We are not going to take it over because we have the confidence that you'll turn it around. I said, I want another assurance from you. Not just you have the confidence, but will you let us take over other failing banks? Because in 2010, there were banks failing from the Great Recession. So we changed the name of New Century Bank because there was a New Century Financial in San Diego, big one that failed at that time, and we don't want to have anybody getting confused. Which is this New Century?
This association.
Changed the name. We went through 2 or 3 names like Client First and and all that stuff. But anyway, then we settled with. We said the business bank, this bank should be totally focused on customers. Its customers. Its name should say that. I'm a firm believer. Your name should, people should be able to understand what you do by your name.
Just from the name.
Just from the name.
I'm going to change
If
the name of
you
my
could
business.
do that, if you could do that, you've overcome one major obstacle, which is who are you? All right? Now, why and all that stuff, you got to still explain because you can't do it all in there. But who are you? We're Customers Bank. All right? And if we don't do that, we don't make our customers succeed, it's a bunch of BS. we're not. So this is why we changed. We gave it a name. So we started from a very humble beginnings of a failing bank, 120 million in assets, and today we are 22 billion. At that time, it had zero equity. Today we have 2.3 billion in equity. Market value, billion. All right, and so that's been the journey. I was appointed by the board of directors of that little bank, which I owned a good portion of it, actually, when you invest money, and to be the chairman CEO. And since that day, I've been the chairman CEO of that company. And I've brought my friend Dick East, who I talked to you about. I met him for the first time when I was hired as a management trainee to be my partner in this bank also, called Customers Bank, and he became the president. I became the chairman, and together as a partners, we built it from scratch. And today, for the last 5 years, we've been recognized as the number one best performing bank in the United States in banks below 100 billion in size, between 10 billion and 100 billion in size. We're very fortunate. This gain we started, it didn't scare me, but that's what I was thinking about when you asked. It didn't scare me. Why the hell am I investing my time in another failing bank? But I figured if you really got to you really got to create wealth and you really got to make an impression, and you might as well start from scratch rather than a company that exists with its own problems. So this company was losing $10,000 a day when I became the chief executive and accepted that of this company. And today, fortunately, we are making well over $1 million a day.
That is beautiful. That is a beautiful
Yeah.
turnaround story. And I have just two more questions for you because I know that we're flowing through time, and that time seems to kind of not go by when you're having a great conversation with a man such as yourself with so many accomplishments and from such humble beginnings. From what I understand, I don't know if I can speak publicly about this. There's an incoming. One of the proudest thing for somebody who builds is to know that their legacy is going to kind of live on. And I understand that your son is either an incoming or part of the.
No, he'll be starting January 1st. He becomes the CEO of Customers Bank.
That's what I understand. But you
Yes, of
till this
Customers
moment,
Bancorp.
that's still you. So that's what I got. The
Another
fact.
58 some days.
Okay, we want to make sure that we get. How does that make you feel to have your own son building something and then having such an amazing succession story where your son takes over because that's something that doesn't always play that way.
Well, we're really blessed, and you got to be lucky. But I also believe that the harder you work on your purpose, the luckier sometimes you get. Uh, that could be true.
The
In
harder
some of
you
the,
work, the luckier you get.
yeah.
I've said that a few times.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, my wife and I were involved in a discussion many many years ago, about 40 some years ago, is a part of a program that we were doing at YPO. YPO is called Young Presidents Organization. And that was challenged was at that time was that everybody should think about their purpose in life and discuss it with their forums, in their own friends, with their own circle of friends of 8 to 10 friends, which are all CEOs. So we were sort of forced to think about what is our purpose in life. And I still remember sharing that, and half our group had the same purpose in life. That's another interesting thing, but other half did not. Our For Sherry and me, the purpose in life became to have children who are intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually better than their parents. If that happens, who cares about money? Who cares about status? Who cares about anything else? That is the most important thing. So we encouraged and thought about at that time that intellectually, as an example, if our kids go to have the best opportunities to have the best experiences in education for their IQ development, intellectual development, we would have filled the purpose. So what could we do to guide them and encourage them and make them work for that? because that's theirs. They have to work hard. It's not ours. Ours is just a guidance. And the same thing on emotional maturity. It is so darn critical. IQ is just one thing, but EQ, your listening skills, your empathy, your skills of developing relationships, your skills for developing trust among others, and having principles in life and having a life full of purpose where others uncalled for you were willing to help others, and that's the only reason why one day you will be recognized as a good human being by them too, because you can't be a great em- emotionally mature person unless you're a great human being first. So that became our principle to try to encourage that. And the third one is spirituality, faith and spirituality, because adversity happens. It's part of life. And you have good times, bad times, you have setbacks, you have successes, you have all sorts of uh, things happen in life, but you got to be resilient. And and you've got to be grateful for what you have rather than bitch about what you don't have. And that's a very important aspect of happiness. And you got to be able to help others achieve that kind of happiness, because that's when you will get a happiness. So, so we kind of split it up, where with my wife took the spirituality focus, emotional was our grandparents and us, and intellectual, I took majority of this. So as an example, when our kids were in their fifth grade, seventh grade, we took them to schools and colleges. We encouraged them to go in the programs for the gifted, shoot for the stars in education, that sort of a thing. So they developed a desire to one day go to some of the best schools in the country. So our daughter ended up at Harvard, our son ended up at Penn and Wharton School, and vice versa for their graduate school. We were lucky, but they had to work their butt off because, there are like 60, 70,000 applicants for 500 to 1,000 people that they admit, and you've got to do that. And they had to do that. Okay. But the drive, that's why I believe there is a tremendous role for parents and grandparents and family in the community in the development of the youth. And when people ignore this woke culture, to me, is the worst thing that could happen for the youth of any nation
Yeah.
that embraces that. All right. And you've got to, because after age 21, everybody's on their own. Forget it. At that time, people have already established their values, their principles, their basic foundation. Uh, and usually with the social media and whatnot, that age is coming down tremendously. And right now it's maybe 10 or 12 that you can perhaps influence. And then it's the social interaction. Their development is much more affected by the society and what they see and their friends and their circle. And those kind of things after that have the greatest influence on their development. But you've got to pay a tremendous amount of attention for that. So to give you a short answer, a long answer to a short question, those were the things, those are the principles that I believe are the role of a parent to help develop. So we are very blessed. We are so, so thankful to God for giving us these opportunities and to help them. And it's a wonderful experience to see that your children are better than you. And that's how talked about legacy. Legacy is having the people take over from you who are better than you. And I, honest to God, believe that, they have this, they're not like you in every aspect, which is fine. They got to be themselves. But in getting things accomplished, taking care of their kids, taking care of their families, having the values and principles and purpose in life defined for themselves, all that stuff clearly. When I was in my 20s or 30s, I wasn't that mature, you know?
That is amazing, Jay. Yeah, I have so many questions for you, but I know you're pressed for time. I wish I would have invited you over daylight savings time. That would I get an extra hour with you. But I know that that your time is extremely valuable, and I want to kind of move on. But I have so many questions. I just want to get two more in, if that's okay with you.
All right, short answers by me.
Okay, well, you take as long as you need. I'm not pressed for time. I'll make the time to hear the answer to your questions. What do you see technology, specifically artificial intelligence,
Mm.
leading both business and our society right now? What's your outlook? I'm interested in knowing what's your
I
outlook
am
on these advances that we're making.
very good question. I am very optimistic about the impact of AI because if you think about it, in the last 10 to 15 years, what's driven our society have been startups. And it's the new technology, effectively, people having technology based and non technology based innovations in new businesses, new ventures, and called startups, which has created a tremendous amount of entrepreneurship in throughout the globe, with America leading the globe. But it's not just an American phenomenon, it's throughout the globe. Artificial intelligence, generative AI, is the next phase of that technology whereby every single business is going to get impacted by it. Now, the degree of impact will be different. Some which are much more manual labor process, repetitive process driven, and are going to be impacted a lot more and quicker. But eventually, everybody will be. So, all the way from you map out the processes of what is it that we do every single day. What is it that all my team does? What is it that our business does to to function most efficiently and effectively? Is there a better way of doing it? All that's very possible because you have the most intelligent thing that's available to you by your side, and you can ask him a simple question. This is my challenge. What are the options available to me rather than have to recruit consultants and all that? I personally believe consulting is going to be redefined into helping businesses become more efficient, effective, and more profitable, and not advice on anything else. I believe every single business, especially business or banking, insurance, process, manufacturing, everything will be impacted immensely. The short-term impact will be lower level of employment or higher levels of unemployment. There is no question about it, but this time around, it's not just going to be the lower wage earners. I think it's going to be the white collar workers who are going to get impacted also. All
All
right.
the way.
And I think there will be new businesses which will emerge. So you combine the startup with process improvement, with customer experience improvements, right? With new innovations, which we cannot even imagine right now because generative AI will create so many different products and services for us, which we can't even imagine. You know, to me, I was just driven by taking pictures with my glasses. Is it- but that'll be obsolete. That's already obsolete. You know, Ray-Ban and Google thought that was really unique, but it didn't take off because most people don't want to wear something which they feel like it's so close to their brain, that who knows what will be its impact. But anyway, those are the kinds of innovations are very basic. But this will be obsolete, in my opinion, within 2 years.
What do you think is going to be replaced by?
It'll be replaced by a watch or something like this. Okay? That'll be everything. It's already very close. But the reason I say watch is because that technology exists today. Right? I don't know what else, but this is far enough away from your head, close enough to that. It's already doing everything that does. So why do you want to carry this? Right? But this is it. This will be your identity. This will be your everything. And you just walk with anything and everything. And this will be able to talk to you. This will be able to communicate with you, answer any kind of questions for you, tell you everything that this stupid thing, 6 inches by 3 inches, which didn't even exist 15 years ago, it will be a piece of trash. Right?
Right.
And this will be 10 times more powerful than that. That's sort of a thing. Some people will carry this still, just like some people are crazy enough to carry laptops still, you know, because it's a habit. So, so AI is going to revolutionize. At the same time, we should be concerned about all the positive things I talked about, it'll have an ability to do all the things for negative reasons too, and for bad reasons. And there will be people just like today, cybersecurity, and phishing is costing billions of dollars to the U.S. economy. Okay, guess what? Generative AI, you multiply that by 10 or 100, that'll be the cost of, of how the bad folks will try to use it to steal. There are always X percentage of the population which will say is, how do I maximize my wealth by greed, by stealing, by anything and any means to try to improve my position? And now they'll have ideas to do it. So we've got to, and all the way from nations using it, you know, to hurt humanity. So I think we got to be. It's going to be the next 5 decades will be decades of huge opportunities and huge risks, and it's our job is going to have to be to have good, right kind of leadership among countries, a leadership in every single business to take advantage of it rather than ignore it in a business. But you will have certain companies that are going to fail because those leaders will be like the leader or leadership of Kodak that invented the digital camera and decided to put it under the rugs because the processing the films was making them more money. And they don't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. So we'll have those kind of things happening right now. So it's a great time for young people. Great time.
Thank you for that perspective, Jay, and thank you so much for making it today. One last thought: if you could say something to that 20-year-old backpacking through Europe, what would that message be? And perhaps that can be a message for the youth as well.
Yes, you must dream and dream big. And dreaming big is think about one thing that you'd like to do, but you don't believe you can do it. But if you were able to do it, it would make a big difference in your life. And go for it. Go for it.
Thank
Right?
you so much, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time at Biz with Blad, Mr. Jay Sidhu, an inspiration to all of us all. This has been an amazing interview. Order his book. I bought mine in Amazon, and I'm gonna have him sign it before he leaves here today. Jay, thank you so much for joining us here for and answering some of these great
Right.
questions.
What a
You're always
pleasure.
welcome. Anytime you can
Thank you.
make some time.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Take
All
care.
right.